The house was always quiet after Mark left for work. A stillness that used to feel peaceful, like a soft blanket, now felt like a vacuum, pulling at the edges of my sanity. My name is Clara, and I've been Mark's wife for 2 years. 2 years of trying to build a home, a real family, out of the spare parts of our previous lives. The biggest, most complicated part of that new life was Leo, Mark's 17-year-old son. Leo was a ghost in his own home, a shadow that flitted from his bedroom to the kitchen and back again, his face perpetually illuminated by the blue light of his phone or the glow of his laptop screen. He was polite, never rude, but the words he offered were like pebbles, small and smooth, skipping across the surface of a conversation without ever sinking in. I tried. God, how I tried. I baked his favorite cookies, left notes on his pillow, asked about his day, his friends, the games he played. The answers were always the same. Fine. Nothing. It's okay. A wall of monosyllables I couldn't seem to climb. Mark said it was just teenage angst, that he'd grow out of it. But I felt like a failure, a stepmother cliché I was desperate to avoid. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. The sun was a pale lemon disk in a hazy sky, and I was attempting to weed the garden, the dirt caking under my fingernails, when I heard a shout from inside. It was Leo, but it wasn't his usual monotone. It was sharp, laced with a panic I'd never heard before. I dropped my trowel and rushed inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was standing in the middle of the living room, his laptop clutched in his hands like a dying animal. "It's not working," he said, his voice cracking. "My final project, it's due Friday. It just died." His face, usually a mask of bored indifference, was pale and stricken. He looked like a little boy lost, and for the first time I felt a crack in the wall between us. "I'm good with computers," I heard myself say, the words coming out before I'd even thought them. "Let me take a look." He hesitated, his knuckles white as he gripped the device. I can just take it to a shop." "It'll be faster if I do it," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "I might be able to recover the file. What's the worst that could happen?" "Oh, Clara, if only you knew." I took the laptop to my small office in the corner of the den, the weight of it feeling strangely significant. It was a standard issue model, covered in stickers of bands I'd never heard of and cartoon characters I didn't recognize. I plugged it in, pressed the power button, and was met with a black screen and a sad, blinking cursor. The hard drive had failed. But all was not lost. I had an external drive enclosure, a tool from my old life as a freelance graphic designer, a life I'd mostly packed away when I married Mark. I carefully removed the laptop's hard drive, a silver sliver of a thing, and slotted it into the enclosure. I connected it to my own computer, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I could see the drive's file structure, a labyrinth of folders and files. I started a deep scan, searching for the corrupted video file he needed for his project. As the software churned away, piecing together fragmented data, a list of recoverable files began to populate the screen. Most of them were what you'd expect: school documents, music files, a few photos. But then I saw a folder. It wasn't named anything obvious like school or photos. It was just a string of random numbers and letters, the kind of name someone gives to something they want to hide. A folder buried deep within another folder labeled System Cache. My curiosity, a beast I usually kept on a tight leash, began to stir. I told myself it was nothing, probably just old game files. But the panicked look on Leo's face flashed in my mind. I clicked on it. The folder opened, and inside were dozens of video files. They were named with dates, nothing more. 4/12/23, 4/15/23, 4/20/20/23. My hand hovered over the mouse, a war raging inside me. This was his privacy, his personal space. I had no right. But the drive was already connected, the files already visible. It would be so easy to just take a peek, just to make sure it wasn't anything bad. I double-clicked on the first file. The video player window opened, black at first. Then, an image flickered to life. It was shaky, filmed from a low angle. The subject was a girl from our neighborhood, a pretty redhead named Sarah, walking her dog. The camera lingered on her, zooming in slightly as she bent down to tie her shoe. The filming was clumsy, but the intent was clear. This wasn't a home movie. This was a secret. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I clicked on another file. This one was of a different girl, a classmate of Leo's I'd seen in a few school photos. She was sitting on a park bench, reading a book, completely unaware of the lens trained on her from behind a nearby bush. I clicked another, and another. A collection of moments, stolen from unsuspecting girls. My hands were shaking. This wasn't my quiet, introverted stepson. This was someone else, a stranger with a dark, voyeuristic secret. I felt sick. The quiet boy I'd been trying so hard to connect with was a peeping Tom, and I had stumbled into his hidden world. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing in the silent den. I pushed my chair back, as if I could physically distance myself from the images burned into my mind. What was I supposed to do? Confront him? Tell Mark? The thought of Mark's face, the mixture of disappointment and anger, made my stomach churn. It would destroy him. And what would it do to Leo? To label him as a creep, a predator, at 17? I paced the room, the plush carpet muffling my frantic steps. I had to pretend. I had to act like I hadn't seen anything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and went back to the computer. I found his school project, a thankfully innocuous video about the local ecosystem, and managed to recover it. I saved it to a flash drive, my movements mechanical, detached. When I handed the laptop back to Leo, I tried to keep my expression neutral. "I got it," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy to my own ears. "Your project is on this drive." He grabbed it from me, his relief so palpable it was almost a physical force. "Oh, thank God, Clara. Thank you so much." He wouldn't meet my eyes, he just clutched the drive and disappeared back into his room, the door clicking shut behind him. And I was left standing there, the keeper of a terrible, toxic secret. The quiet in the house was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with the unspoken things I now knew. The next few days were a waking nightmare. Every time I saw Leo, my mind would flash with the images from those videos. The way the camera had lingered, the sense of violation in every frame. I'd watch him sitting at the dinner table, silently pushing food around his plate, and see a stranger. I'd hear him moving around in his room and imagine him at his computer, curating a secret collection. The secret was a living thing between us, a third presence in the house that only I was aware of. It poisoned every interaction. I found myself avoiding him, making excuses to be out of the house when he was home. I was angry, but I was also scared. Scared of what I'd discovered, and scared of what to do with the knowledge. Mark noticed the change in me. "You okay, honey?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed with concern. "You've been a million miles away." I'd just force a smile and say I was tired or worried about something trivial. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. How could I tell my husband that the son he adored, the boy he was so proud of, had a sickness in his soul? How could I be the one to shatter the fragile peace of our blended family? So I said nothing, and in my silence the secret grew stronger, feeding on my fear and inaction. A week passed. I thought I had compartmentalized it, locked the images away in a dark corner of my mind. I was wrong. I was in the laundry room, sorting through a mountain of clothes, when I found a pair of Leo's jeans. I reached into the pocket to pull out a forgotten tissue, and my fingers brushed against something small and hard. A memory card, a tiny black square memory card, the kind you use in a digital camera or a small camcorder. My blood ran cold. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this wasn't for a school project. I stood there for a long time, the card clutched in my hand, the hum of the washing machine a monotonous drone in my ears. I should have thrown it away. I should have put it back and pretended I'd never found it. But that same dark curiosity, the one that had led me to click on that first folder, took over. I had to know. I had to see if this was more of the same, or if it was something worse. I waited until Mark was asleep and Leo was out with friends. The house once again plunged into that oppressive silence. I slipped the memory card into the slot on my laptop. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The files loaded. There were only a few. I clicked on the first one. The video was shaky, filmed from what looked like a high shelf in a bedroom. It was a girl's room, messy and cluttered with clothes and makeup. A girl came into the frame, and I recognized her. It was Jessica, Leo's ex-girlfriend. They dated for a few months last year, a relationship that had ended as quietly and mysteriously as it had begun. In the video, she was getting ready for a date, humming to herself as she applied mascara in the mirror. She was completely unaware she was being filmed. The video went on for 10 minutes, a mundane, intimate moment captured without her consent. I felt a wave of nausea. I clicked on the next file. This one was different. The camera was on a desk, pointed at a bed. Jessica and Leo were on the bed, kissing. It was passionate, intimate, and it was clear from the angle that Leo had set up the camera to record them. He had filmed them without her knowledge. My hand flew to my mouth, a gasp escaping my lips. This wasn't just voyeurism. This was a violation of the deepest kind. This was a crime. I watched, horrified, as the video played out, my mind reeling. The trust, the intimacy, all of it a lie, captured for his private collection. I didn't watch the rest. I couldn't. I ejected the memory card, my hands trembling so violently I could barely get it out of the computer. I wanted to smash it, to burn it, to erase the images from my mind. But I couldn't. This was evidence. This was proof of how far he had gone. The secret I was keeping was no longer just about his disturbing hobby. It was about a betrayal so profound it made my head spin. And I was the only one who knew. I couldn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, the memory card a lead weight in the pocket of my robe. Every creak of the house, every groan of the pipes, sounded like an accusation. I had to do something. But what? Going to the police felt like a nuclear option. It would ruin his life, brand him as a sex offender forever. He was 17, a stupid, messed-up kid, not a hardened criminal. But what about Jessica? She deserved to know. She deserved justice. The thought of her, oblivious, going about her life while this video existed, was a torment. I thought about telling Mark, but the image of his face, crumpled in despair, stopped me. He would be destroyed. And what if he didn't believe me? What if he thought I was making it up, trying to drive a wedge between him and his son? The thought was absurd, but in my sleep-deprived, paranoid state, it felt possible. I was trapped in a prison of my own making, and the walls were closing in. The next day, I was a zombie. I moved through the house on autopilot, my mind a chaotic swirl of fear and indecision. I was making coffee, my hands still shaking, when Leo came into the kitchen. He was rummaging through the fridge, his back to me. "Hey, have you seen my black jeans?" he asked, his voice casual. "The ones with the rip in the knee?" My blood turned to ice. He was looking for the jeans. He was looking for the memory card. I had to force myself to speak, to keep my voice steady. "I think they're in the laundry basket," I said, my throat dry. "I haven't gotten to that load yet." He grunted in acknowledgement and continued his search. I could feel his presence behind me, a physical pressure. I waited for him to ask about the memory card, to accuse me. But he didn't. He just grabbed a carton of milk and went back to his room. The reprieve was temporary, I knew. He would realize it was gone, and then what? I had to make a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. I spent the day in a state of heightened anxiety, jumping at every sound. I knew I had to confront him, but the thought terrified me. I needed a plan. I needed leverage. And then a strange, bold, and frankly insane idea began to form in my mind. It was born out of desperation, a last-ditch effort to regain some control in a situation that had spiraled completely beyond me. If he was watching, if he was filming, then I would give him something to watch. I would become the star of his show, but I would be the director. It was a dangerous game, a walk on the wildest side of sanity. But as the idea took root, a sense of calm, however fragile, began to settle over me. It was a terrible plan, a reckless, foolish plan, but it was the only one I had. I started small. That evening, I made sure to be in the living room when Leo was home. I was wearing a silk robe, a gift from Mark, over my nightgown. I accidentally let the robe fall open as I bent over to pick up a magazine. I didn't look at him, but I could feel his eyes on me, a sudden, intense focus that was different from his usual obliviousness. I felt a shiver, a mixture of revulsion, and a strange, thrilling sense of power. I was playing with fire, and I knew it. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't just a passive victim of his secret. I was an active participant. The next day, I was in the garden, sunbathing in a bikini I hadn't worn in years. I knew his bedroom window overlooked the backyard. I made a show of applying sunscreen, my movements slow and deliberate. I was performing, playing a role, and I knew he was watching. The game had begun. I started to notice the small things, the way his phone would be propped up on the table, aimed in my direction, the way he'd forget his tablet on the counter, the camera lens facing the living room sofa. He was getting bolder, or maybe I was just getting better at noticing. I was hyper-aware of every camera, every lens, real or imagined. I started to find my own hidden cameras, not to film him but to film myself. I bought a small, discreet pen camera online. I started setting it up before my performances. I was documenting my own performance, creating a counter-narrative to his secret films. It was my insurance policy, my proof. The dynamic between us had shifted. There was a new, charged energy in the house, a silent, tense dance we were both a part of. Even though only I knew the steps, he thought he was the predator, the one in control. But he had no idea he was just a character in the movie I was now directing. The tension was unbearable. Every interaction was laced with this new, unspoken subtext. A simple good morning felt like a line from a script. A shared meal felt like a scene from a thriller. I was living a double life, and the strain was starting to show. I was losing weight, my sleep was plagued by bizarre, unsettling dreams. But I couldn't stop. I was obsessed. I had to see how far he would go. I had to know what he was planning. One afternoon, I accidentally left my diary open on the kitchen counter. It was a fake diary, of course, filled with fabricated entries about my loneliness, my insecurities, my frustrations with my marriage. It was bait, pure and simple. I went for a walk, leaving him alone in the house with it. When I came back, the diary was closed, but it was in a slightly different position. He had taken the bait. That night, I checked the pen camera I had hidden on a bookshelf in the kitchen. The video showed him reading the diary, his face a mask of concentration. He read for a long time, then he looked up, his eyes scanning the room, as if he could feel my presence, my gaze. It was a chilling moment. He was no longer just a passive observer. He was engaging with the narrative I was creating. He was getting deeper and deeper into my trap. I knew I was reaching a breaking point. The game was getting too dangerous, the lines between reality and performance too blurred. I needed to end it. I needed to confront him, but I had to do it on my terms. I needed a grand finale, a scene that would bring the whole twisted production to a head. I planned it for a Friday night when Mark was working late. I told Leo I was going out with friends, that I wouldn't be back until late. But I didn't go out. I waited in the dark, the house a silent stage. I knew his routine. I knew he'd take the opportunity to snoop, to look for more material for his secret films. I had set the stage. I left a trail of breadcrumbs, a series of clues leading him to my office. A slightly ajar door, a glowing computer screen, a chair pushed out as if I'd left in a hurry. I was hiding in the closet, my heart pounding, a small remote control in my hand. I had connected my laptop to the big screen TV in the living room. I had created a playlist, a final shocking performance. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, soft and cautious. I heard the creak of my office door. I held my breath. I heard the click of my computer mouse. And then, I pressed the button on the remote. The TV in the living room flared to life, its light flooding the hallway. I had chosen the video carefully. It was one of mine, from the pen camera. It showed me sitting at my desk, writing in my fake diary. I was talking to the camera, to him. "I know you're watching, Leo," I said, my voice a low, deliberate whisper. "I know what you do." I know about the videos. I let the video play for a few more seconds, my face, my voice, filling the screen. Then I stepped out of the closet. He was standing in the doorway to my office, his face illuminated by the flickering light from the living room. His eyes were wide with shock, his mouth agape. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the air thick with the unsaid, the unseen. The secret was finally out in the open, a raw, pulsing thing between us. "Clara, he stammered, his voice a choked whisper. He looked from the TV to me, his face a canvas of horror and confusion. "How?" "I found your videos, Leo," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, steady. "On your laptop. And the memory card from your jeans." I took a step towards him and he flinched. "I know about Sarah and Jessica. I know about all of it." He was trapped, cornered. There was nowhere left to run. The dam broke. The words came pouring out of him, a torrent of shame and confession. He talked about his loneliness, his feeling of being an outsider in his own home. He talked about the pressure he felt, the insecurity that gnawed at him. He didn't have a good excuse, not really. He knew what he was doing was wrong. But hearing him say the words, seeing the raw vulnerability in his face, I didn't see a monster. I saw a lost, confused, and deeply damaged boy. I wanted to feel something," he said, his voice cracking. "I wanted to feel like I had some control, like I mattered." It wasn't an excuse, it was an explanation. And in that moment, I felt a surge of something I hadn't expected. Pity, and a strange, complicated kind of love. I didn't tell Mark. That night, Leo and I talked for hours, a raw, painful, and necessary conversation. We talked about boundaries, about respect, about the difference between privacy and violation. I made him delete every video, every file, every trace of his secret collection. I made him promise to get help, to talk to a therapist. It was a fragile truce, a tentative step towards a new kind of relationship. The next morning, I watched him walk out the door to his first therapy session, and I felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult. The trust between us was broken, and it would take a long time to repair. But we were no longer living a lie. The secret was out, and in its place we had a difficult, painful, but honest truth. I was no longer just his stepmother, and he was no longer just my stepson. We were two people who had seen the darkest parts of each other, and had made a choice, together, to step into the light. The game was over, and a new, more challenging, and ultimately more real story was just beginning.